They say a city is only as strong as the memories it keeps in Welleran. But what happens when those memories fade? High upon a green hill, bathed in sunlight and pride, stood the magnificent city of Merimna. Its towers gleamed like spears reaching toward Ur. The heavens and its streets bustled with laughter, song, and the quiet hum of peace. No enemy had dared approach its walls for nearly 100 years. The people believed they were safe, forever. But peace can be a dangerous dream. Long before this golden age, Merimna had nearly been lost. Countless enemies had once surrounded it: barbarians, warlords, beasts of the dark hills. And it was not kings nor divine intervention that saved it. It was 5 warriors, 5 names carved into history itself. There was Welleran, the calm-eyed strategist whose blade never missed; Surinard, fierce and unshakable, whose battle cry could chill the blood of giants; Mombalek, swift as a flame, dancing between arrows like wind; Rollery, the silent slayer feared even in distant lands; and Akanax, proud and mighty, who stood like a wall where armies fell. They were Merimna's shield, its heart, its roar, its wrath. But time, relentless and quiet, swept them away. One by one, the heroes died, not in battle, but in peace. Their bodies were laid to rest in great tombs, and towering statues rose in the city square, carved from white stone. Children were told their stories. Songs were sung. Then, silence. As the decades rolled, by the songs faded, the stories shortened, the people changed. Now the statues stood like forgotten ghosts, their faces blurred by wind and rain. The youth passed them daily without a second glance. Their names became decorations on old plaques. The swords they once held rusted in dusty halls. No one trained, no one prepared. There were no soldiers, no war drums, only merchants and minstrels and dreamers. The city had everything: beauty, art, joy. But it had lost something vital. It had lost memory, and, in the forgotten corners of the world, far from Merimna's peaceful walls, dark eyes watched and waited. Northern tribes, once crushed by the city's legendary warriors, had not forgotten. In their cold mountains, they whispered tales of Merimna's pride and its weakness. "They are soft now," said one chieftain. "Their swords are stories. Their warriors are statues." The drums began to beat once more, and as war gathered like a storm on the horizon, Merimna slept, trusting that the past would protect them. But stone statues do not rise to fight, and the sword of Welleran had not been drawn in 100 years. Heroes never truly die, not when their names are whispered in the dreams of the brave. While Merimna slept beneath its veil of peace, one young boy dared to dream of something more. His name was Rold. He wasn't a soldier. He had never held a sword. He lived a quiet life, helping his parents in the city's quieter quarters, where the echoes of the past barely reached. But unlike others his age, Rold often wandered alone to the city square, not to play but to stare. He stared at the towering statue of Welleran. There was something in Welleran's carved expression, solemn, watchful, that stirred something inside him. A sense of awe, a hunger for purpose. He would sit for hours wondering, who were you really? How did you save us all? And more importantly, what would you do if danger returned? One night, as moonlight bathed the white stones of the city, Rold fell into a restless sleep. But what came to him wasn't a dream. It was something far deeper. He stood in a field of shadow where time had no meaning. A cold wind blew across the graves of ancient warriors. And then, he saw him. Welleran. Not the silent statue, but the warrior himself. Tall, cloaked in armor, his blade glinting with light that seemed to come from within. "Rold," he said, his voice like distant thunder. "The enemy rises. Merimna is blind, and her people are unready." Rold stepped back, heart pounding. "Why me? I'm not a fighter. I'm just a boy. Welleran's gaze did not waver. Once I was just a boy too, until I chose to stand when no one else would. Do you have the courage to be more than they expect of you? And then, he vanished. Rold awoke with a start, drenched in sweat. But something had changed. He no longer felt like the boy from yesterday. He felt called. The very next morning, drawn by a force he didn't understand, Rold followed the dream's pull to a forgotten building at the edge of the city. The old Hall of Arms. Dust covered everything. Cobwebs hung like curtains of the past, and there, resting on a stone pedestal, was Welleran's sword. It was massive, beautiful, untouched. His fingers trembled as he reached for it, and when he grasped the hilt, it felt as though fire coursed through his veins, not burning, but awakening. Centuries of courage, of duty, of battle cries and victories passed into him in that single moment. Rold stood taller. Outside, the wind shifted. The city didn't know it yet, but change had begun. That night, Rold climbed to the statue of Welleran. The moon cast long shadows, and he stood beneath it, sword in hand, and whispered, "I will not let your story end with stone." It wasn't the sword that saved the city. It was the fire behind it, the fire that remembered. The morning sky over Merimna was quiet, but not for long. From the distant hills came a sound not heard in 100 years, the thunder of war drums. The tribes of the north, fierce and merciless, had crossed the plains. They came on horseback, armored in furs and rage, eyes blazing with revenge. They believed Merimna was soft, defenseless, and forgotten by war. They weren't wrong. Panic spread like wildfire through the streets. There were no armies to call upon, no guards trained for battle. The city, wrapped in comfort for so long, had forgotten the scent of danger. Fathers clutched their children, mothers whispered prayers. The city's leaders, powerless, looked only to each other with fear, and then a single figure stepped forward. Rold. Barely more than a boy, he stood. At the city gate, clad in the ancient armor of Welleran, the legendary sword held high. The sunlight caught the blade's edge, and for a moment it gleamed like lightning. The people gasped. Some thought they were seeing a ghost. Others whispered, "It's Welleran. He's returned." But it was not Welleran. It was his spirit, reborn in a young soul brave enough to carry the legacy. The invaders saw him too. They stopped. To them, it was unthinkable. The stories had said Welleran was dead, but there he stood, just as the elders described. The gleaming blade, the steel gaze, the aura of power. Fear cracked their confidence, and in that silence, Rold stepped forward, not back, and shouted, "This is Merimna, and we do not fall." From the rooftops and alleys, the people watched, breath held. Then, something incredible happened. Others stepped forward. Inspired by Rold's defiance, the young men of Merimna began to gather. Farmers, bakers, carpenters. They carried tools, kitchen knives, anything they could find. The spirit of the city had awakened. The memory of Welleran and the others, once buried under time and silence, burned bright once more. And then, they charged. Rold led them, not like a general, but like a flame burning through fear. The sword of Welleran cut through the enemy ranks like prophecy fulfilled. The northern tribes, shaken by the belief that they fought not men but legends, broke formation. Confusion spread, some fled. Others dropped their weapons, convinced they had stirred a wrath beyond this world. The battle ended not with destruction, but with a roar. A city remembering its strength. Merimna had defended itself once more. But it was no longer just a city of statues. It had become a city of living legends as the dust settled. Rold stood where it had all begun, beneath the statue of Welleran. He no longer looked up with wonder. Now he stood beside it, equal in spirit. The people gathered around him, not as a boy, but as the first of a new generation, keepers of the flame. And somewhere in the wind that rushed between the marble towers, a voice echoed, not loud, but proud. Well done.